All right, we are back. There's a lot to talk about. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with Mitch Salazar. Event number 8, the Lexus Trestles Pro presented by Outerknown, is done and dusted, with Brazil's Yago Dora and Hawaii's Bettylou Sakura Johnson securing their second event wins of the 2025 season and really establishing themselves within the WSL top 5 with 3 events to go before the 2025 Lexus WSL Finals in Fiji. Up next, we have the Vivo Rio Pro presented by Corona Cero. It starts this weekend. But really up next, my friend and yours, Mitch Salazar. How are you feeling, buddy? Long week down at Lower Trestles. You know, it's been a couple days since we finished. What's going on for you?
Well, I mean, what an amazing week and 3 days of excellent competition. I'm super stoked on the outcome, Dave. And, you know, props to you and your incredible team for putting this on and everybody behind the scenes. You know, it takes more than just one person to make something like this happen. And I'm not only super pleased, just really stoked on all our sponsors, all of our supporters to be able to go down there and have such a great time. And, of course, the wave delivered. So, you know, seeing those performances and the necessity of having Lower Trestles back on tour as a full-time event, to me in particular, I feel like this is one that's going to be remaining here for a very long time right now. And we got perfect summertime swell. Weather was epic. Water started to warm back up again. I was really pleased. I don't know about yourself, Dave, but to me, this seems like a staple that we need to keep on tour for many years to come.
Yeah, I agree. I think even before I started working for the ASP back in 2005, you can bleep that out if you want me to go. But I lived down in Orange County. I worked at the Rip Curl Surf Center, and it was always happening every time the tour came to town. You know, all the world's best surfers, because we were like the main surf shop there, they'd get their quivers dropped off there. They'd come into the shop. You get to see them in real life. You get to talk to them. You get to walk down to the event and just you see the world's best surfers surfing for a week straight. And it's a major thing. And obviously we've been there the last few years, but I think for those of us that have been close to it, it took us a minute to calibrate, because the last few years it hasn't been a full-time CT event. It's been the WSL Final, so it's an elite field. It's the top 5 men and women. It's a one-day event, and we haven't had a full CT event there since 2017. And even then, it was always in late summer. You know, it was in September. So really, it was also at a different time of year. It wasn't quite those surf bout event dates. We used to have high-level QSs in like late April, early May, but sort of those NSSA Nationals, I think the USA Surfing Championships now have historically been in that June window. So different time of year. It was really nice to have everyone back, and the surfing really delivered. But yeah, I think it will be a staple for many years to come if we can help it. And let's get into it, man. Let's get into winners and losers from the Lexus Trestles Pro presented by Outerknown.
Yeah, I mean, pretty hard to pick 3 losers and 3 winners out of the event. But, you know, if I'm going with losers, I think it was evident, and not throwing any shade at anybody, including myself, who was riding a 2+1, you know, during our free
right.
surfs over there.
Same, yeah.
But I just think that, you know, you can't really ride any non-standard equipment or any non-high performance equipment out there during competition, especially post-cut. Everybody's excellent. There's a reason why these people remained on tour, both the women and the men. And it just goes to show you Joel Vaughan finally cracked through. He made it into the quarterfinals riding the stock standard shortboard. Same thing with Jack Robinson. The synergy just has a little bit more twist over there with Starby and Marcia Suvi, the incredible team that he has behind the scenes. And, of course, JS Industries, Mayhem. They have the 2 finalists, Kanoe Igarashi, Yago Dora, Sakura, DHD with Molly Picklum as well. And in the end, I just feel like having those kind of things, especially with your backyard being right there, if you're Matt Biolos, you have personal attention to your surfers. It makes things way easier. Having Gian Bernini, Yufu Penrose was down there from Sharp by Surfboards too. We saw Britt Merrick and Brent Power from Challenge every single day. And I just think that this is the perfect canvas to really test things out. But having a surf in the pocket, those boards force you to do that. And we saw excellent waves all week long. You need to ride a high-performance shortboard to really excel in those kind of conditions, Dave.
Yeah, it's a great point. Shout out to Chris Boris of Boris Surfboards. He was down there supporting Katie as well. And as you pointed out, it is kind of the most consistent test track we have for high-performance surfing in Southern California. So, you know, the Shapers, even if they don't reside in San Clemente, are traveling north or traveling south because it is such a great testing ground for equipment. You know, first loser for me coming out of the event, it's a little bit straight off of the rankings, but it was the front runners. Heading into Lower Trestles, Trestles, we had Gabriela Bryan and Jordy Smith. They're both still the front runners, but I think most core lords would have picked Gabriela as an event favorite. You know, her blend of style and power surfing is such a lethal combination at a wave like Lower Trestles. And as it went, you know, she ended up going down to wildcard Sawyer Lindblad in the quarterfinals. As I said, still front-runner spot on the rankings, but you can start to see some of the fangs coming out from her competitors. They're now inching closer in her rear view. And then on the men's side, Jordy Smith, I think you and I have been talking about him since even before the season started. He released that incredible video edit. I think he is the form surfer of 2025, my humble opinion, of course. He looked really great at lowers. Energy was super high in and out of the water. Like, I talked to him for a little bit. He just seemed like he was in great place. Ended up going down in the round of 16 to local boy Cole Houshman. So I think he represented himself pretty well at Lower Trestles. He still holds a pretty healthy lead on the CT rankings, but with Yago Dora's really statement win, vaulting him to number 2 on the rankings, heads into the last 3 events, and then the Lexus WSL Finals, which is at the left-handers in Fiji this year. I think Jordy is now going to be taking these heats much more seriously. I know he already was, but I think Yago is number 2, Italo hovering in the top 5, and Cloudbreak kind of looming. You know, I think it was a tough one for the front runners at Lower Trestles.
Yeah, that's my second loser as well. And I not only agree with you, I think the main point right here is that they have the opportunities too. I mean, Gabby Bryan was the first heat of the finals day. She lost to local surfer, as he said, Sawyer Lindblad, who had best heat ever over there against Gabby in a really high-performance situation when you look at the conditions. I mean, it was all time. She did it both going right and left, and you were just thinking with the waves, with the size of the waves more than anything, Gabby was no doubt the favorite, and she just couldn't perform. For some reason, she looked off on almost every wave, fell a few times in awkward ways that we haven't seen before so far this year. And for Jordy Smith, he didn't surf bad. He had more than 15 points. He had an excellent score in his loss to Cole Houshman. Houshie was just on another one, though. And there was one wave in particular, Joe, and I did that heat with Sean Thompson in the booth, and it was really cool to have Sean's perspective on Jordy and his career so far and really his longevity. But there was one wave that Jordy claimed. It ended up being a 6, and I just kind of saw that attitude where he tried to sell something. That looked like a Jordy of the past and not the one that we've seen so far with the consistency. I'm not taking a direct jab at him or anything because good friend, as we all know, we're big admirers of him. But in those kind of moments, I wanted to see that extra spark. Didn't necessarily see the air game, and I felt like got a little let down with the waves that he selected too. The right-handers in that heat were a little softer, didn't necessarily have that kind of push. And if you look at Cole, he was just going to town on those lefts. Less is way more on the lefts over here at lowers, and I just think it was perfect accuracy on his behalf. But in the end, they're still leading the rankings. There's a lot more to go. Jordy's been a champion in Rio. Gabby's done very well in Sakura as well. I'm not preoccupied by either of them, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a great point. And bonus shout out to 1977 world champion Sean Thompson. He was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Waterman's Ball on Wednesday night. And it was awesome to see him and Wayne Rabbit Bartholomew there as well. Yeah. So huge achievement. And still ripping, both of them. Second loser for me was actually that Tuesday elimination round heat between Barron Mamiya and Kelly Slater. I think afterwards you and I were kind of joking that heat should probably be condemned to like professional surfing hell. Not too many rides in total. You know, Kelly had 4 waves, mostly kind of high 4s and mid 5s. Barron had 5 waves, 3-0 burgers, and then he had a high 5 and a low 6. He ends up tweaking his knee on that last wave. He needs help kind of getting in and getting up to the structure. He's out for the rest of the event, so he missed his round of 16 heat, although he is planning on traveling to Brazil to surf. I mean, he really is one of those surfers that if he's in the top 5, he's in Fiji, he's in with a shot. We've seen him go on a huge tear at waves like Pipeline and places like that. And so I think he's very, very motivated to stay in the mix across these last few events. And then Kelly, he went down needing a mid-6, which he likely would have gotten on that left-hander. He surfed very well after the horn blew. So, yeah, I think that he is probably kind of the nadir for me in an otherwise really exciting event.
Yeah, and Kelly spoke about it on the broadcast that he didn't necessarily want to surf in the event. It was kind of a last-minute decision, and he got in. Obviously, going up against Ito in the very first heat, he knew that he had to be on certain waves. Waited a super long time. Those waves never came through. Did have a decent score right at the end of the opening round heat. But as you said, in the elimination round, same thing, a little too much patience. I feel like he was just kind of getting ahead of himself. Meanwhile, Barron, like, golden opportunity to go out there and kind of equalize things because, remember, Kelly knows the stats very well against who he surfed, and Barron has had his number before, and especially back in 2022 when Kelly beat Barron, and that was Kelly's last CT victory. He was very well aware of what's been happening so far between the two of them. So, yeah, I mean, big-time bummer right there for Barron. Hopefully he's maybe not 100% heading into Brazil, but at least 80, I think, is sufficient for him to be able to maintain that top 5 spot. And for Kelly, I no doubt think we're going to see him at least in the future, one more CT event, 2026 and beyond. But my third loser, and, you know, it's just because of the time period, it's the Swell Doubters. And this part, late May, early June, you're either going to get a spectacular South-Southwest swell or it could be fickle. And luckily for us, we scored. And, you know, props to Surfline, Kevin Wallace, everybody over there doing an amazing job. Extremely accurate forecast. We knew that there was fog expected too. And when we're on the beach, we never mention the F word. That's one thing that is absolutely a no-go just because we don't want to see a delay. And with state parks, major shout-out to them too. But, you know, you do have to run from 8 to 5 every single day. It has to fit in that window, and you can only run one day on the weekend. So need to be a good selection. We opted for Saturday. Ended up working great for us. A little bit too big yesterday, which was Sunday. And I feel like decision was made the morning of, and we absolutely scored. So props to everybody on the team, but especially the guys at Surfline. Kevin Wallace and his crew did an amazing job.
It's a great one, and I can confirm the decision was definitely made Saturday morning as we were there counting sets and whatnot, and ended up being a great day. I will back tag that post-heat interview Kelly gave about not wanting to actually surf the event, and you know, who knows, I had dinner with him on Wednesday night. I didn't really press him on it, but I think both things can kind of be true, right? Like, I think he is someone who literally has nothing else to prove to anybody. He's the greatest surfer of all time. I think the only person he has things to prove to is kind of himself, and that's where you kind of see some of these opportunities turn up. But at the other side of the equation, a good friend of mine brought up the parable of the fox trying to get the grapes, and there's these grapes hanging on a vine, and the fox is up on its tail trying to get it and can't get it and can't get it, and finally just goes, yeah, the grapes weren't even ripe. I didn't want them anyway, kind of thing. And so I'm like, You know what? I think that's a good way to look at it. Like, sure, he wanted to surf a bit more. I'm sure we all would have loved to see him surf a bit more, but I'm with you. I don't think that's the last time we'll see him in a jersey. Final loser for me, loser in quotation marks, coming out of the Lexus Trestles Pros is the majority of the men's rookies remaining on tour post-cut, so 2 out of the 3. They did struggle a little bit in San Clemente. You had France's Marco Migno, who I was really looking forward to see surf Lower Trestles. He ends up dropping 4 spots with an equal 17th. He went down to Crosby Colapinto. And then you got Mexico's Al Cleland Jr., another surfer I really looked forward to watching. Kind of like interesting. They have really different approaches to high-performance surfing, and both are really valid and warranted. But Al, he drops 3 spots, equal 17th of his own. He went down to Connor O'Leary. Obviously, the tour, it's a place where everyone is so good that anyone could win any heat at any venue. But the canvas at Lower Trestles is one you'd think would lend itself to new energy in a way that maybe some of the other ones don't. And I would have liked to have seen a bit more surfing from both Marco and Alan out there.
Well, it did work for Joel Vaughan, and especially against Italo in the round of 16, he had something major to prove. It's the first time he's broken through into the quarters. But no, I mean, when it comes to Al and Marco, they're obviously going to be back. They're on tour for the rest of the year right now and all of 2026. But I think for Al, the one major thing was that we finished, we hadn't gone through to his heat until the very next day. He was the first one of the morning. And from my perspective at Lowers, it's not always the best being the first heat of the morning out there because it's hard to get waves during the free surf. It's almost just as difficult as pipe to actually get some waves to get things going. And you go out there against Connor O'Leary, who had already, had a good amount of experience leading up to this year. He knows what to do in those kind of clutch situations. Don't wait around, got busy under priority, and Al was just waiting for a couple of sets that never rolled through. And kind of the same thing for Marco. Had a great heat against Seth Moniz, but then unfortunately right afterwards, I just feel like right here you're looking at, okay, 2 guys that have something to prove, want to prove it, but then they try to overperform on certain waves that don't let them. And that's the difficult thing about lowers. You need to be able to take a step back and make sure you're competing before you're actually just surfing too. And everybody wants to prove themselves. In my honest opinion, though, and this is just personal, you already have just by being on the CT.
Totally.
So don't try to do too much or get too creative in a sense that way that you're losing out early and you're not able to keep advancing grounds. And that's what Yago had. I mean, if you look at Yago's performance and even Canoa's one throughout the entire event, those two guys were just decimating everybody, but they were making calculated and the right decisions in the right moment. And those are my first two winners. I mean, Yago Dora drops a 9.53 literally on the very first wave of the final, seconds into the final. Canoa had more than 16 points in the final. We're talking about one of the all-time greats right there, Mayhem versus JS, and of course, Goofy v Regular. First time ever we've seen a goofy-footed champion since 2002 when Luke Egan had been the only one to win right here at Lowers. And for Canoa, he proved his point that he's a deserving top 5 member at the moment, 40 minutes south from Huntington Beach right here at Lower Trestles, somebody who's competed here before at the CT level, has finals experience, went through the USA surfing program and both NSSAs as well. It obviously paid off, but to me, these two guys prove that they're top 5 material. I expect to see both of them in Fiji.
Yeah, it's a great call. Both of them looked awesome. And back to like different styles, like, you know, Luke Egan being the last goofy-footed male to win out at Lower Trestles before Yago Dora, very different approaches to how they surf that wave. Both of them probably still really relevant. You take Luke's 2002 approach, put it into 2025, and he's going to get excellent scores as well. You know, first winner for me, actually kind of, you tagged it a little bit, but picking up where my last loser left off, it's the one men's rookie that made some headway at Lower Trestles, and that's Shelly Beach's Joel Vaughan. Yeah, this is a young man who you and I talk about, but we probably haven't talked about too much this season. I just think he's been really impressive. He was working with one of San Clemente's favorite sons and a former CT stalwart himself, Kolohe Andino, at this event, and I think it really showed. He looked so solid in round 1, despite finishing second to Griffin. Big win over Miguel Pupo in the elimination round. Then I'd argue probably the win of his career. You mentioned it already, but no doubt, taking down an on-fire Idala Ferreira in the round of 16, and then came up short against Griffin again in the quarters. Maybe there's a little nemesis thing going on for him there. But equal 5th, he advances 5 spots up the rankings to 14th. And yeah, congrats to Joel on a really impressive event. And I don't know how the Joel Kolohe Andino coaching relationship came to be, but I think that was one that made a lot of sense. Like once you thought about it, and it obviously delivered a huge result.
Yeah, I know Dakota Walters was staying there too. He's dealing with a small injury. And Dakota last year when he was on the Challengers at the U.S. Open, he was actually staying at brother's house. So Joel being good friends with Dakota, he probably reached out and said, hey, like, you know, is there a chance that we can work together? Ended up opening, you know, the whole house to him, and he was staying over at brother's house. And really funny story, before he paddled out for his quarters, I was checking out his board, and he was riding Kolohe's fins, and he was like, yeah, I just took them from his garage. And he totally did, like without Kolohe even knowing, and signature model from FCS, and they were obviously working very great. No, but props to that kid, man. I mean, we all love him. He's an outstanding dude, really compassionate guy, and obviously knows how to surf too. But no, I agree. I mean, wholeheartedly, you beat somebody like Italo, who's had outstanding years so far, extremely consistent, went out there and demonstrated that he's capable of winning, you know, those major heats, especially when the waves are pumping. Italo had more than 16 points, bro. Like, you know, not many people are beating that guy when he's in that form with those kind of waves. So totally. Shout out once again to Joel Vaughan. My second winner, though, and I feel like this is somebody who has truly proven her point so far this year. It's Bettylou Sakura Johnson. And the move to Mayhem, obviously incredible. I didn't know that she was still dealing with that pain from the spinal contusion she suffered at Pipe. She said so when I interviewed her, and it doesn't really seem like it's affecting her at all. She dropped an excellent score every single time she paddled out at this event and proved her point that she was the most high-performance surfer at the most high-performance wave in the world. And props to her. Her second win so far this season. Coming into this year, she didn't have a single one. Now she has 2, and she's elevated in the top 5 conversation, Dave.
It's a great point. And I mean, I didn't know she was still carrying that injury with her either. There is something that we've seen over the years in surfing, and I think it's pretty consistent in all sports. And the phrase is, you know, beware the wounded animal. And in surfing, there's just so many variables. It's such a dynamic field to play. There's so many different ways you can approach putting together a high performance ride, from the routine that you're planning out, from the maneuver selection to the equipment choice, etc. That sometimes when you have surfers of such a high caliber that are injured, it kind of simplifies their approach in a way that's really productive, right? Like you're even psychologically, you're just a little bit more limited than you would be otherwise, because you're carrying the knowledge that you have that injury. And so it's focusing in a lot of ways. And I think that wouldn't surprise me if that played a role in Bettylou's performance. She looks so good. She was like, every time she stood up on a wave, and like those first couple of maneuvers had so much spice on them. They're so dynamic, and she deserves a ton of credit. The second winner for me was the Sawyer Lindblad Tanner Gudauskas combination. Sawyer, we have her, she's in her second season on the CT in 2025. She didn't make the cut at the last event at Margaret River, but got the call up to surf the post-cut season opener in her hometown of Lower Trestles. She looked excellent. Strong opening round performance. She was second to eventual event winner Bettylou, but ahead of reigning women's world champion Katie Simmers. She takes down one of the form surfers of the season in Isabella Nichols in the elimination round, then looked awesome in her win over current CT rankings leader Gabriela Bryan in the quarters. Eventually, again, went down to Bettylou in the semis, but I think she's really proven that she belongs at this level. And she was working with Tanner Gudauskas at the event. He was coaching her in her corner, and I think that really mattered. And I mean, we like to say things like, if it's a hometown wave, like, you do have an advantage, but there's also a lot of noise that comes with that. We've seen it over the years in surfing. It's not a walk-up start that you're going to do well there, just because the community expectations are there. So I think Tanner in her corner was a really calming presence. He was also, Mitch, I want to get your take on this too. I think he is a revelation on the broadcast, for sure, in my humble opinion. And the guy, he still surfs at a legitimately elite level himself. So, big winners for me coming out of the event, and I hope we're graced with more Sawyer and more Tanner in whatever capacity in the future.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was super pleased to have Tanner on the broadcast. Obviously, somebody that I really looked up to. I don't want to get too emotional right here, but growing up in Mex, I started surfing in 07, and that was really, a big moment for surfing within North America, especially within the U.S. You had a lot of guys trying to qualify. Kikoa Bam Bam Picasso, Joel Centello from Hawaii, and then the guys that I looked up to a lot just because of the proximity: Pat, Dane, Tanner, Brett Simpson, Sean Ward. And once I started working and being friends with these guys, I just kind of thought to myself, like, dude, like, everybody's so chill, and, it's admirable. And I've known Tanner for a good amount of years right now. We've shared the water before, and we compete in local board riders events too. But having him in the broadcast to me was extremely relevant. He's one of the few people that has a perfect 10-point ride over there at Lowers. Really good going left, great going right, obviously, too, but has experience at this venue. And no, I wholeheartedly agree. He just became a father recently. Congrats to him and his wife, and, now a resident of Oceanside. But I think the main thing to look at right here is that he was working with another goofy footer, too, because certain things probably won't apply the same way if you're working with the regular footer.
Right.
You've already seen things from a certain perspective, and to me, that wholeheartedly worked out with Sawyer. So congrats to both of them. They did an amazing job on both the broadcast and, of course, surfing. But, stoked to see Tanner right there, and hopefully we can get him on more broadcasts in the future. And just to close this out, my last winner, and I think I speak for everybody, it's the surf industry, it's the fans, and everybody that supported the event down here at Lower Trestles. Really appreciate everybody coming down. I had a lot of chats with people on the beach, and of course, with my limited time, I was running and scrambling most of it, but the impact that this event has on the local community, especially in San Clemente, made a major difference. Once again, 3 days rather compared to just the finals format where we only have one. It was efficient, and especially on the weekend, it was packed, it was crowded. Having Kelly right there on the beach made a big impact too, but most importantly, the waves. I mean, look at the performances. I was counting close to 50 excellent scores, combined women's and men's, and I can't really say that about too many events, Dave, especially when it comes to high-performance surfing. So props to everybody. They put on an amazing event.
Yeah, it's a great one. And my final winner we're going to talk about in a bit, I'm sure. But yeah, it's Lost Surfboards. They had 50% of the quarterfinalists across the men's and women's divisions. That's never been done in the 3-year history of the Vissla CT Shaper Rankings. It's the most dominant single event performance we've seen since we started measuring. They had both event winners in Bettylou, Sakura Johnson, and Yago Dora. Technically, there are still 293,700 points up for grabs across the last 3 events, but realistically, I struggle to see a real pathway for anyone to overtake them this season. They've unquestionably established themselves as the runaway high-performance board label on the planet these last 3 years. So huge congratulations to them. They did it at home. Matt Biolis, Shian Bernini, Grady Archibald, the whole entire factory crew. So it's just really impressive.
100%. And, shout out to Mike Riola, too. He put on a couple of great events down there. The Catalyst at Basham's, they had the grand opening. And, yeah, just really cool to see. I mean, they for sure benefited off of the event. And they're just one of them. You talked about Chris Boris. He elevated his performance. Everything was going on down there. And same thing for Sharp Eye. I know they're just a bit further down south to San Diego. But all these guys getting the exposure that they wanted, they were able to get it. But, yeah, I agree with you. Nobody's taking down Mayhem at the end of 2025 anymore.
I struggle to say stranger things have happened because I don't think they have. But that's it for winners and losers from the Lexus Trestles Pro presented by Outerknown. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. When we come back, we are going to talk surfboards. All right, we are back. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodent here with Mitch Salazar. It's time to discuss where we're at on the 2025 Vissla CT Shaper Rankings storyline. Shaper Rankings! We are into our 3rd year, so a quick reminder how we measure this. It is a combined men's and women's rankings. We count all the surfers finishing in the quarterfinals or better. The Shapers receive the same rankings points as their corresponding surfers. The higher the surfer places, the more points that shaper gets. And we're tracking the Vissla CT Shaper Rankings from Pipeline through Tahiti. And in addition to being honored as the 2025 CT Shaper of the Year at the WSL Awards, this year's winner will be gifted an overnight stay and surf at Surf Ranch Lemoore, courtesy of the Kelly Slater Surf Ranch and the WSL. So Mitch, we tagged it at the end of our winners and losers segment, but Lost Surfboards, helmed by Matt Biolis, both event winners, Bettylou, Sakura Johnson, and Yago Dora, 50%. 8 out of the 16 quarterfinalists were on Lost Surfboards. Never happened before in the 3 years we've been measuring. They're just unstoppable.
And the crazy thing about it, I don't think they've even peaked yet either. I mean, Griffin's still got a little bit more left in the tank, and they're looking for a world champion on the men's side too. Let's not forget about that. I mean, it's been Sharp Eye, it's been Timmy Patterson, and of course Cabianca also with Gabe Medina. Can't forget about Paizel with John Florence. But yeah, I always talk to Matt about that, and he's like, yeah, you know what? I love the exposure. I'm great at it, and I'm winning events. Now, if I had an argument, against what Matt said, and not that I do because I love him and he's my shaper. Shout out, Matt. I'm still waiting on one of my boards, by the way. But now you need to become a world champion on the men's side because Carissa's been able to do it in the past on the women's side. You've got Caroline Marks being able to do it before on the women's side too. Okay, where's Yago? Where's Griffin? It's the time to pounce on it right now. And there's a couple of wounded warriors up there, especially with Jordy up at top in the rankings. We all know that Fiji is a destination that probably benefits goofy footers more than the regulars. Unless you're Jack Robinson and Barron Mamiya, you got to get going right now if you're those two guys. Griffin and Yago, they have the chance of a lifetime right here. They want to be able to consolidate it for the first time ever. And to me, in my humble opinion, this is really where these boards prove a point, working outside of just high-performance waves. Can they hold in a wave like Fiji when it is big, when it's growling, when it's distinct? And I feel like the answer will be that question will be answered very shortly, Dave.
It's a great point. Let's talk about some of the other board builders. DHD, pretty strong event from them. On the men's side, we talked about the rookie Joel Vaughan. They also had Ethan Ewing and Connor O'Leary, all 3 of them in the quarterfinals, and that vaults DHD up to 4th on just the men's only rankings. And on the women's side, they had Australia's Molly Picklum. She finished runner-up to Bettylou, Sakura Johnson in the final. So really strong showing for DHD Surfboards, a brand who, as we've talked about, doesn't have a huge amount of representation in the mainland U.S. It's a primarily Australian-based team. Obviously, they do come to Lower Trestles. Mick, is out there often. They have some exposure there. They've had a lot of conversations with Lost Surfboards out there. What did you see out of the DHD equipment at Lower Trestles, Mitch?
Well, first things first. I think we need to tackle the big question right here. Was Ethan Ewing riding a couple of different Shapers boards in the pre-up to this event? Yes, he was. But in the end, he stuck to the Juliet model right there, and that ended up working. He made it to the quarters, lost a very close heat as well. He was leading the majority of it, and then right at the end, they switched it. When you look at Joel Vaughan's performance, though, this is necessary if he wants to stay relevant. Darren Hanley does. Molly, haven't talked about her a lot. She was 7-0, or 0-7 against Caitlin Simmers. Finally got one above her in the semifinals. Congrats to her. She's looking well. She's been very consistent this year. I just feel like their boards work very well everywhere. I mean, high-performance surfboards, of course, but you come over there from the Gold Coast, have a different playing field every single time you paddle out. Snapper, Burley, of course, Duranbah, which to me is one of the most high-performance waves on the planet, too, and some of the best surfers on the planet as well. So, yeah, props to Darren. I'd love to see him more in person. He wasn't here at this event, but I feel like that presence goes a long way for both the surfers and the people involved within the industry as well. So, Darren, come on. Want to see you at a couple more events before the year ends.
I like that. Sharp Eye. Let's talk about them. You mentioned Marcio Zuvi. You mentioned Yufu Penrose. I was talking to someone about this the other day, and they said, I'm not surprised that Lost Surfboards has been so dominant, since you started the Vissla CT Shaper Rankings. But I did think that there'd be other contenders, and particularly the narrative around Sharp Eye over the last probably 5 to 10 years is a major one. And I am curious. I might go back just for giggles and rerun some of the rankings before we started, just to see if that bears out, because they still have a super duper strong team. But at lowers this year, Luana Silva's sort of their only team rider on the women's side at the moment. She wasn't able to get a good result at Lower Trestles. And then on the men's side, we saw Jack Robinson. He finished third. He looked actually really, really excellent at Lower Trestles. I don't know why I said actually, because he looks excellent everywhere, but I think when you think of Jack Robinson, you think of like his super duper strengths at venues. It's, Tahiti and Fiji and Pipeline and, Big Sunset Beach and, waves like that, the box. And then this year, I think the last few years, he's really developed that high performance edge. And I think a lot of credit goes to Sharp Eye, it goes to Marcio Zuvi and the boards they've been putting under his feet. And a lot of credit goes to him. I think he's gone out and really worked on that comprehensive, what do I look like at Bells Beach, a little bit of a slopier right-hand performance wave? What do I look like at Lower Trestles, and how can I get excellent scores? And so he's been super duper impressive. Other surfers on Sharp Eye that you maybe expected to get results out there, Felipe Toledo, obviously two-time world champion. He finished with a 9th place. Leonardo, close heat, very close. It could have sliding door moments, right? Like he gets through that heat. Does he win the event? Not sure. I mean, you could argue that. Leonardo Fioravanti, he's had an excellent season. 9th place for him. Jake Marshall, same deal, 9th place. Rio Waida, 17th place and down the line. So probably not the team result that Sharp Eye was looking for. But, back to your point about winning world titles, they got boards under Jack Robinson's feet right now, and he looks awesome.
He definitely does, and I was extremely impressed. Just touching on the fact that you mentioned Bells Beach, I saw a lot of similarities from his surfing over there, right here replicated at Lower Trestles too, especially that on-face carve. But I really like the aggressiveness from the get-go on the majority of waves from Jack. I mean, he was looking at those steep sections, just being like, okay, Leandro probably talked to him in the corner before he paddled out. We got to go big if we want to get an excellent score at this wave right here, because you look at the waves that Yago had, you look at the waves that Cole had on the lefts, they were going massive on the first section. Of course, there's just a lot more risk involved right there, and the degree of difficulty is always elevated with that too. So I thought Jack Robinson looked excellent, a major performance from him, and he's obviously made huge improvements in his small wave surfing and performance surfing too. But look at the time period he's been on tour, less than 5 full years, already 8 event wins, multiple semifinals, and that involved too, and an excellent closer when it comes to being in the finals as well. So Jack, he's up there. I feel like Jake Marshall could have done a little bit better. Same thing for Leo. We talked to him, and he just said that he's matured a lot. He still has a lot more to prove. He's looking for his first CT win. But yeah, Sharpa has an incredible crew. I mean, there's no doubt that they're one of the most talented teams on the planet. The only issue, though, same thing with Mayhem and the larger ones, every now and then you do get friendly fire, and when that happens, you lose one right there. And then when if one person doesn't convert on the other side of the brackets, you're losing people out before it counts, before the quarterfinals. So that seemed to happen right here. Overall, though, once again, extremely close heat between Griffin and Felipe. I could have seen it going either way. Props to both of them. And now the question begs, and I know we're going to get into it, what does Channel Islands do right now if things don't work out with Barron Mamiya? Because I'm hoping that he does surf the rest of the season, even if it is with a small injury. But they need to get going with recruiting some more people because they're really lacking on both the men's and women's sides.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge for them. I think we mentioned it before. Like, they probably had the hardest team hit at the cut, right? They lost 66% of their team to the cut. And we went through them, I think, on our last episode. Every single one of those surfers cut is not like, let me back up. Every surfer that makes the CT absolutely deserves to be there. I think once you're there are levels to it. I think when we were assessing the Channel Islands team on the last episode, every single one of those surfers we could see in a world title chase, right? They are an elite caliber of talent in that group, and it just hasn't panned out for them. We talked about Barron. Barron's their number one team rider at the moment. He's at 5th. He has the knee injury. And then you start to move down the men's rankings, and someone like Zhao Xianka is next up. He's at 17th, and it's a challenge, I think, for the Channel Islands team right now. I don't know if it's a recruiting thing. I don't know if it's nurturing the team they currently have and just hoping the results get a bit better, because again, all of them surf really well. Those board models are going insane right now. Like, they're getting incoming, we won't name names, but even sort of elite level surfers that are testing other boards are reaching out and asking to try some Channel Islands, and why wouldn't you? And then on the women's side, I think we've seen a real resurgence from someone like Lakey Peterson, longtime 100%. Channel Islands team rider. She had an impressive, heroic kind of Disney pick performance in West Oz to stay on tour with that equal third. She looked awesome at Lower Trestles, especially on her backhand. I think on that Tuesday, I'd say that the left she was surfing were some of the best surfing we'd seen all day, and ended up getting a 5th place finish. So, she's back in the mix. But yeah, I think that the Channel Islands team between now and 2026, they'll see how things drop with the Challenger Series. They may be, they might be hunting for some other people, but what they have going in their favor is the current team is awesome. They just need the results to hit. And probably the most important thing, whether they want to retain the current team, elevate the current team, or attract new team members, is the board models across the board are elite.
Yeah, and I think if you look at their European market too, it's obviously very competitive over there with a lot of local brands, but I'd personally be inclined to try to pursue somebody from over there that's doing well in the Challenger Series. You have young Tia Zabrowski, who's riding for Sharp Eye right now. She's looking incredible. She's already had a 2nd place finish last year at the CS level. She's coming off of an impressive result in Newcastle. But those are the kind of people that you need to look for when they're young, so that way when they're close to qualifying, incentives are larger for them to want to remain on the team. Same thing happened with Barron. I mean, he rode for chemistry forever, and as soon as he was about to catapult to that next level, had to sit down with Sean Ward, his manager, the CI crew. They obviously have been performing very well with him, and same thing with Joel Xianka. I mean, Channel Islands hadn't really opened that market up in Brazil up until they got him, and he's been one of their more pivotal riders so far. But no, I truly agree. I think Lakey Peterson is a major key to their success so far. The last few events, she surfed incredible. There's been a couple of ways where I've really highlighted her as just being one of the best surfers on the planet. She's just having issues, though, really performing in those big heats, and especially on finals day. I want to see her make a final pretty soon. She's been a champion before in Jeffreys Bay. She's done well in Rio. I think there's a couple of events in her future where she can do really well.
Yeah. Last one, I know we mentioned Chris Borst of Borst Surfboards, San Diego. He was at the event supporting Katie Simmers. I think on the women's side, Katie has inarguably been one of the most exciting stories of the last few years. I say on the women's side because she's on the women's rankings, but I'd argue that just in surfing, she's been one of the most exciting stories in recent memory. And when you have like a sort of a meteoric talent like that, you get a ton of attention, you get a ton of incoming, you get a ton of people saying, you should try this board, that board, we can do this, we can do that. that. Chris Borst, he's not a label at that like massive tier of labels. He's got a huge, factory and huge budget and huge team. Like Katie is his one surfer across the men's and women's CTs. And she is, I don't even say stuck with him. She's elected to stay with him, right? And she has had a ton of incoming requests to ride other surfboards. Those boards work excellent for her. Here's an interesting thing with her heading into Lower Trestles is, a few of the conversations I was having with people, they're like, oh, Katie's been a little bit quiet this year. And maybe like we saw a lot of shine from Bettylou over the last few events. We've seen Gabriela Bryan's been ascendant, but Katie has had an awesome year, right? Finals at Pipeline, wins the second event in Abu Dhabi, quarterfinals, semifinals. She did have those two events, 5th and 6th, where there was a bit of a dip, but Margaret River, runner-up finish, Lower Trestles, equal third. She's having an awesome year coming off of a world title chase. So, huge shout out to Chris Borst because those boards, they look excellent.
Well, I think we just have such a high standard of her too that if she's not winning every event, it's almost like, oh, Katie, she's gone downhill. It's like, no, dude, like, chill out. The kid's not even 20. Like, let her live her life and let her do her own thing. And to be honest, with the format still being the way it is, you just get to the finals, and if you have the endurance, the stamina to be able to surf, those 5-6 heats that you need, you can still be a world champion. And the one thing I think I will say that separates her is that she's just as good when it's pumping as to when it's small. And I feel like her and Chris, with that intimate relationship that they have with board building, she's probably going to get a couple of larger boards and take a lot of short boards with her to the Lexus WSL Finals if she does make it there. I feel like she is. It's pretty obvious at the moment with the rankings. But all in all, yeah, she's still having a fantastic year. So any doubters, you guys better quit that. She's heading into Rio looking to become a 3-time champion. Back to back to back, by the way, if that happens.
Big time. Well, Mitch, before we leave our surfboard corner and we geek out on something else, plenty of waves going around the event site. Yep. We had lay days, we had this, we had that. Well, did you get any yourself? And if so, what were you riding?
Yeah, so I just picked up OG Puddle Jumper 25. Huge fan of it. It has 5 fin boxes, so I rode it as a thruster, but I can ride it as a quad. I took out my MR Cali Twin yesterday. Awesome. 2+1 setup right there with the Mayhem Evil twins, pretty big ones, and then you have the small trailer. And then during the event, actually on finals day, I paddled out for about 45 minutes right there at the lowers left. I asked Chuy Reina and Trav Lee if I could borrow one of their Firewires. I rode the S-Boss as a quad. It's been years since I've actually ridden a quad as a performance board. It worked well. It caught me a little off guard on the first few waves, but I had a heck of a time on that thing. 6'2", just over 37 liters, really fun. And I just think when it comes to kind of flowing and making sure that you're actually staying in the pocket the entire time, that's the cool thing about quads. Get the right amount of speed, but they hold very well. But I know you're still on your mod quad. That thing seemed to go very well over there down at lowers, but anything else you've been riding?
Yeah, no, I still have the mod quad, light speed 2. Didn't bring it down lowers. I actually just brought like the one Quiver Killer board. I brought the Channel Islands MTFA in ECT construction, another 2-1 like setup, and it's such a good board. Like, I mean, I sneak out for little sessions on the inside lowers left, good days, bad days. You're excited to go. It's so fast. It's so loose. I'm really happy with the waves I got during the event because, you do your best. It's like, I'm not there to hassle for waves. I'm not there to hassle the locals or hassle certainly the CT surfers. So you try to kind of pick your spots and go like, okay, there's no one out there. I'll just kind of sneak in and get a few waves. And yeah, that board in particular, it feels good on pretty much every wave. It's hard to get off of it. But got a bit of a break over summer, and I'm looking forward to trying some more boards here before we get into the fall season.
Yeah, it should be really fun. And ECT, it's eco-carbon technology, right? So maybe a little stiffer, but just a good amount of flex when you actually need it on the face of the wave.
Totally. And I mean, I'm one of those guys, I think I've been riding like EPS boards for like 10 or 15 years mostly. I get the odd like PU board. So I'm used to that. And yeah, I've been a big fan of the spine tech. I think it's similarly in terms of stiffness, but it does feel like it flexes a little bit more. It's a little bit lighter. So you're probably compromising just a little bit of durability for more performance with that mix. But right. I like them both. I actually have a better everyday quad in spine tech coming. I'm excited to try that whenever it turns up. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks to Vissla for letting us geek out on surfboards for the Vissla CT Shaper Rankings segment. We're going to take another break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to talk fantasy as well as answer listener questions.
All right, welcome back to the Lineup Podcast. I'm your part-time co-host, Mitchell Salazar. That is the great Dave Prodan. Let's talk fantasy. This year, the Lineup Pod is running a CT fantasy contest. We'll be playing all season long and awarding the overall top 3 fantasy winners at the end of the season with gift cards to the WSL store valuing from $50 to $150. So update on the fantasy rankings, Dave, from our Lineup Fantasy Mega League, our top 5 post-Trestles. We got a new number 1 here at this event. Dr_J, 1529.92 points. Nico MGNT, 1412.56. Pada with 2 Ds, 1411.21 at number 3. Acidic Buzzard at 1407.11. He's at number 4. And Kepani, 1399.53, came in at number 5. Now, the overall rankings. Joey Pepperoni at number 1 again. The guy's been relevant all year long. Congrats, Joey. 54.75.87. Butterfly Surf comes in at number 2, 53.89.07. Anthony Pitolkow, 53.45.15. Dane Gurr at number 4, 53.32.13. And another relevant surfer, Mateus Guilherme, MG, 53.20.37. Pretty darn good. And just a reference for after Marks, look at the big difference between the people that won over there at Margaret River. Leo Barcelo Surf 860.61 compared to Dr_J. Dave, nearly double, 1529.92. Absurd, but that comes with the excellent scores that we saw event here at Lowers.
I agree. I don't think I did great this event. It's like I'll put it this way. My floor and ceiling for fantasy performance are very close together. So I wasn't like a disaster, but I've never done that well. But like relative to how well I haven't done, I think this event was a bit worse for me. I finished the event 695th. But
is that overall or in our league?
No, just in the league. But the league's huge, so that's fair.
Yeah,
but
it's not bad.
That's all right. What'd you finish in our league?
I'm in about 300. So shout out to myself.
All right.
I did a
pretty good
job. I have around just over 1,200 points. My thing was that I knew that my Tier A guys were going to do well. I had Yago as my power surfer, and I had Kanoa also on my team.
Damn. Oh,
but
my
God.
God.
Tier B could have done a little bit better. I had Miggy.
Hold on. You had
Leo.
both men's finalists on your Tier A, and you picked the power surfer for the winner?
Yeah.
Shoot, that's pretty good.
Well, I, just looking at numbers and styles and probably the swell that we were looking at, so it worked out for me. But I'm nowhere near both Joey Pepperoni and Dr_J. Those guys, for some reason, are just dominating. But what I will say, my women's team probably could have done a little bit better. I did have Katie as my power surfer. Once again, she finished in the semis. It's not horrible.
No, that's
so I
pretty
had
good.
Sawyer Lindblad. That definitely helped. But I feel like where people just decimate everybody is when they pick a power surfer that's in their Tier B, and those people go on to make the semis,
Sure. That's fair.
Yeah.
I went with our Gabby Bryan for my power surfer in A. As we said, I felt like she was on her way. She just kind of had that really odd heat for her against Sawyer. I went with Isabella and Lakey in Tier B. Isabella out earlier than I thought. Lakey quarters is pretty solid. And then Aaron Brooks for Tier C.
I had Aaron too. I had Aaron as well.
But what you had said you had Sawyer.
That's right. No, I had Bella then. You're right. Yeah, I switched out Sawyer last minute.
Got it. Yep.
What I did was, since we were still waiting the announcement of the wild cards, I waited until the very last minute.
Smart.
But I had Aaron initially, and then when I saw Sawyer, I was like, oh, you know what? Lower seeded surfer. She's always going to go up against a top seed. Maybe something more to prove. And you're right. I actually changed it right at the end. That's
fair. I mean, Aaron is such an interesting one. Like, I think that she's still so young. She's such an amazing surfer. We've seen like that amazing surfing at points throughout the season. I think that expectation management thing from the surfing world before her rookie season, I don't think it's gotten her. I think she's had an awesome rookie year. I just think kind of the cognitive dissonance between like this girl's going to win a world title her rookie season versus these are the world's best surfers. Like nothing is guaranteed. And I talked to her a little bit, actually. There's a cool thing that happened right before the event started, and she was on the cover of the current print edition of Surfer Magazine.
That was rad.
Yeah, and because Kelly Slater was on the last cover, he surprised her with her cover of this edition, like a big blow-up thing, and it was cool. I got to talk to her a little bit then, got to talk to her dad, Jeff, and got to talk to her throughout the event a little bit. And you could tell that she's super respectful. She's super excited to be on tour. But just beneath the surface, she is just like bristling with like, I want to taste another win. Like, I want to get to Fiji. And, there are 3 events and depending on how she goes, she could be in the mix. And if she's in the mix at Fiji, we've seen her win there before. It could be a big upset there.
Yeah, and I forget who it was, but we did our preseason analysis once again here on the lineup, and somebody submitted a question: is there a possibility we could see her winning, the World Championship in a rookie year? Absolutely, but I think it just demonstrates how difficult it is to maintain consistency. You don't have that many chances to get going within the same event too, and overall, of course, it's still a great year. You made the cut. It obviously matters. She got emotional over there at Marks, but we need to realize she's still only 17, and there's a lot of growing pains involved in this, especially with the changes in tour, the way she's grown up with social media, expectations are there, but you have a good relationship with your sponsors, of course, with your shaper. Things are working well in your favor. Don't take anything personal or too at heart. Just go out there and enjoy yourself with the remaining events that you do have. And if you end up winning 1 or 2 and you're in the top 5, well, to me, that's a major accomplishment right there.
I agree. And it's like such a nice kid and so fun to surf with. Like, I don't try this, but as I said, like if any of the apex predators like the CT surfers end up where I'm surfing, I try to get out of there, but she and I end up kind of in similar positions, and I always kind of back off, and I'm happy to watch because she is such a good surfer, man. It's really fun to watch her surf, so that's pretty exciting. You talked about your men's tier A. You went 1 and 2 with the power surfer. That's really impressive. I went with Jordy Smith, as we said, went out in the round of 16. I kind of felt like I didn't think it was like a unconventional pick because he's the current number 1, and I think he's the form surfer of the season. But I'm sure
he's won there twice.
He's won there twice. I just felt like his size and his power with that lowers right-hand canvas, he was going to have a pretty big point of difference. He looked great. We said he went out to an on-fire Cole Houshman in the round of 16. And then I went with Ethan Ewing. Ethan was actually my power surfer. Good event. Quarterfinals finish. I keep waiting. I'm like, Ethan's the CT surfer's surfer. Like, he's going to get a result at some point, and I think that's still possible. And I was hoping to buy low, relatively low, on Ethan at lowers before we got to like J-Bay, where probably 99% of people are putting him on his team.
Right.
Who'd you have in tier B?
I had Miggy and Leo. They lost out early, but luckily I had Joel Vaughan, who a sleeper pick, by the way, and I also had
a great pick. Oh, that's a great pick. Well, that was Kaushi was tier C, right?
He was.
Okay.
And that was, well, sorry, I got ahead of myself right there.
Good.
But
I had him too, which I was like, you.
You have to have at least a couple of goofy footers in there, especially as us. Like, we got to represent our own, But I just felt like this year, and we talked about it a ton on the broadcast, they had to go out there and prove that the left was capable of dropping excellent scores as well. Cole did it. Yago did it all event long. We saw a couple of regular footers go out there and get some great scores too. Griffin was throwing away either a 7 or a high 6 in one of his heats as well on the left-hander. And just goes to show you, it's a peak. It's not necessarily just the right. And I feel like the main reason why we always see the rights is because it tends to be the longer wave. But just because it's longer doesn't necessarily mean it's always better. And I was a huge fan of how she's surfing. Connor had a couple of lefts too. He made it to the quarterfinals. I should have put him on my team, but that was actually a good pick to go to.
Connor looked really good. I went with Felipe and Griffin in tier B. I felt like that was pretty easy money in that tier for them. Felipe, close heat, went down the round to 16. I think 88% of teams started him, so I wasn't alone there. 87% started Griffin, but I think he paid pretty solid dividends going to the semis.
88, wow.
88% for Felipe, 87 for Griffin in tier B. I think that's it. It's just like you look at all the CT surfers on paper and you go like, these two, either have or could easily win at Lower Trestles, and they're in Tier B. That feels like a pretty safe bet for me. And then my other two in Tier B, I went with Marco Migno. We mentioned him already. Maybe that I forgot I picked him on the team. Maybe that's why I was like, I wish I'd seen more of him out there. I would have liked to see more out of Marco. And then Zhao Xianca, I felt like that as a speedster, like a good point of difference at the event. He finished in the round of 16, pretty respectable showing. And then we talked about it, Cole Hauschman in Tier C, happy with that pick. And then I went with the local Ventura boy, Dimitri Poulos. You had both those heats on that first day we ran on Tuesday. Ended up going down the elimination round. I think it was really cool that he did so well in Newcastle, and really cool that he turned up at Lower Trestles in time to compete at the CT level. I think as a power surfer, it's right there. I think he ended up going down to Kanoa Igarashi, and Kanoa ended up making the final. And I mean, for as good as Dimitri is, and I'd say he's arguably the form surfer in that age bracket in Ventura County right now, which is saying quite a lot because it's a really high talented, high performance county in terms of surfing. There's still a gap, right, between the very best CS surfer from your region and an elite hitter like a Kanoa Igarashi on the CT. And I think Dimitri could absolutely get there, but it felt like it was apparent in that elimination round heat.
For sure. And also shout out to Kira Pinkerton. She flew, halfway across the world also to compete as a wild card at her local break. But no, Dimitri's won a couple high-profile QS events. So is Kira. As you said, I just think all they need is a few more reps in terms of heats, high-profile heats, especially next season. That's what's going to happen. I mean, you're going to be one of the lower-tier surfers. You have to go up against the big dogs. And that's the only way really to prove yourself. If you look at tennis, whether it's a Grand Slam or an ATP 100, everybody's got to start from the very first round. And if you lose out right there, you ain't even getting a T-shirt from the event either. So, you either got to prove yourself right at the beginning, or it's just going to be one of those cycles where until you break out of it, you're going to stay right there. I do want to mention, though, there were a couple people that came up to me and they were like, oh, what do you think of the odds of Al Cleland Jr.? I said, he gets on the right waves. There's moments of brilliance from him. And we saw it with a couple of maneuvers. We didn't see it necessarily with a complete ride. I had him in my Tier C. I'd been free surfing with him a couple of days before. He did show up about a week before, coming straight from Bali after Margs. And, I felt like he was going to do a little bit better, just considering that Timmy Patterson, local shaper from here as well, knows the break very well. He's competed, in the area. He's been successful in the area with being a U.S. Open champion. Didn't work out, but in the end, these are all learning and growth moments for a lot of these young athletes.
That's a great point.
So join the Lineup Podcast Mega Leave. We're doing our CT Fantasy Contest. What's in store? Well, we got exclusive Yeti and WSL gear, signed jerseys, other cool stuff in the store as well. Make sure to set your teams and power surfers ahead of the event, though, because after the cut line, everything matters before the event starts. And check out today's episode for more details on everything else. All right, let's get into our listener question segment, Dave. Thanks to everybody for writing into @TheLineupPod. If we don't get to your question today, we'll make sure to answer in our DMs as we always do. Starting off, @Haru_Marsden. An excellent question. How do you transition into a turn after an air so quick? You want to go ahead and answer this one, Dave?
Having exactly zero experience of doing this well. I mean, you're much better positioned to answer this, Mitch. The only thing I'll say is that, having watched this a lot and having listened very intently to people who talk about it, the transition has so much to do with where you land on the wave and how much speed you're carrying into that transition, which we've seen it. We've seen gigantic airs stomped with really excellent re-entry angle and speed at the right part of the wave, so that they're almost they're accelerating through that bottom turn after the landing and straight into a turn. And then we've seen actually kind of small waves that get stomped, but they get stomped with almost the full brakes get put on, right? And often the wave kind of moves past them, so that's the last maneuver they do on the wave. But Mitch, again, you've infinitely more experience with this particular experience than I do, so curious to get your take on it.
Yeah, well, I don't do a whole lot of airs right now either, but Back in my day, and I always used to look up to a lot of guys that were great at them. Eric Gauselman was one of my idols growing up.
Sure.
The Gudauskas brothers once again, and of course, Brett Simpson, really tight in transition, coming from a beach break like Huntington. He was one that I just kind of try to replicate my surfing and style too, knowing that most of the waves that you're competing at tended to be like that. And to me, it's pretty simple. You want to look at your landing before you even start your air, and transitioning from a turn to an air. You mentioned it. It all comes down to speed and timing. I mean, especially speed. But for a guy like myself, the more speed that I'm carrying, the better, because I need to get that pop into the lip. Even if the section does have that extra curve on it, I still need to get way above the lip line to be able to look at that landing and know where I'm going to land at. For somebody smaller, I'd personally say that you don't necessarily need to project yourself as well as you would think of somebody like me. All you really need to do is get under the lip line. And sometimes it's even better to point it towards the beach, because the way you're doing that, instead of landing right on the white water and having to deal with all that explosion around you, you're already in front of it. So you're beating it ahead of time. But transitioning from turn to air, speed, and practice, of course. I mean, that's really the master of all repetition right there. So get your practice going. Just make sure if the board is flipping around, cover yourself, especially your head. Things are going to happen eventually. People get injured, but if you really want to try this and get better at it, it all comes down to practice. But a great question, Haru. Thanks for writing in. And stoked we were able to answer it. Our second question, Dave, at Lonnie_Pua. Bettylou has obviously seen putting in the work, but is Tom Whitaker her secret sauce?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, we've talked quite a bit about coaches on this podcast. We talked about Tana Gudauskas, and I think coaching has become a really important part of elite level surfing over the last few years. And we got great coaches on tour. You got Richard Dog Marsh, you got Jake Patterson, and on and on and on. I think with Bettylou in particular, like, if you've only just kind of recently become a fan of CT surfing, you got to remember, like, Bettylou on her ascent to the CT was probably considered the premium surfer, like coming out of her generation. She looked electric in events. She looked electric in free surf. She had amazing timing, amazing style. And I think everyone expected her to do well on the CT, and she has. I think a few factors are going into this year. I think the board switch to Lost Surfboards to Mayhem has been a big piece of it. I think working with Tom Whitaker is a piece of it. But I just think, I think Tom and Matt and like any of the CT coaches or shapers would say the same thing. It comes down to the surfer themselves. I think she's really putting in the work. I think she's doing all the things to let she's maximizing her talent. In a lot of ways, and her talent is so elite. And I think the coaches, they put together teams for chemistry reasons a lot of times too. We've talked about it with Dog's team and how Gabby Bryan actually mixing it up with the boys like Ryan Callanan or Connor O'Leary or Leo or the other folks in Dog's group really has helped her this season. And I think Tom's no different. Like Tom, I think he's got Katie, he's got the Colapinto brothers, and now Betty on that group. Like it's a great mix for her to be a part of, not only for her benefit, but she's benefiting the others as well. But Mitch, what do you think about that? Because you have such a close eye on the team stuff on the CT.
Yeah, I think Tom's a major part of it. I don't think he's just the secret sauce though. But it's a great question because there's a lot more that goes into it than just one person. And if you look at Sakura's rise to where she is right now in 2021, it literally comes down to the last Challenger Series event at her home break in Haleiwa. She wins that, qualifies. She's had ups and downs. You're a victim of the cut, wins the U.S. Open, requalifies. And since then, there's been an ascent. That doesn't mean that there still hasn't been the difficulties that she's faced, injuries, whatnot, but it takes time. And this is such a completely different sport to any other in the world because the arena might always be there, the basketball court, the football, field is always going to be there. The waves aren't necessarily always going to be present, and you're within a time constraint too. And 30 minutes sounds like a long time. Every single time you paddled out, how many times did you look at your watch, Dave, and be like, "Oh, I've caught 3-4 waves in a span of an hour," and that's with 100 people out there. Now imagine under pressure with only one person out there who's trying to beat you and maybe take your spot on the championship tour as well. So it's a process of learning, of understanding, and especially with quick turnarounds this year on the CT2, there's no room for error. I mean,
Right.
in 7 events, I know it got expanded to 7 rather than the 5 in previous cut years. Now with 7, it made a major difference, and she slowly found her form. And I want to point out a big heat where I saw a major transition. She loses a count back to Gabi Bryan in Portugal. I believe it was the last heat of the day. Gabi ends up making the final. That easily could have been Bettylou right there at that point too. And look at how quickly that changed right now. Off to an incredible season. 2 wins already where she hadn't had a single one before. And of course, every single time, whether win or losing, Tom's in her ear, making sure that she's listening to what she needs to listen to. So yeah, he's a big catalyst, but it all really comes down to the surfer too, and whether or not they can appreciate that information.
Totally.
Okay, now that I went on a little riff right there, we got to get to our last question, and this is an excellent one too, and you're going to be way more appropriate to answer it than me, Dave. At Juan C. Ripple, if a competitor falls off the CT in 2026, then wins pipe, could those points get him back on?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a good question, right? Because we have made significant changes to the CT starting in 2025, and it's always worth recapping those. And so we are going to start same amount of men's surfers. We'll have 36-man fields. We are going to increase women's field. There'll be 24 surfer fields. We're going to have 9 CT events, which will take us into September. Lower Trestles, which we just completed. Will be the 9th event, and that'll be our quote-unquote cut event. Same deal, top 2/3 will advance on to CT10 in Abu Dhabi and CT11 in Peniche, Portugal. But the entire field will return for the Pipe Masters in December, and that event will be worth 1.5 times the points. So another way to think of it is if you miss the quote-unquote cut at Lower Trestles and you're the 23rd ranked male on tour, you're not going to go to Abu Dhabi, you're not going to go to Peniche, but you're going to come back, and the number 22nd surfer, the number 21st surfer who just competed those events, they're going to be looking at you in the rear view because you're going to be there. It's 1.5 times the points of a standard season CT event. So a huge result there could qualify you for the CT starting in the next season. And the rationale behind that was that it's the most revered event on tour. Pipeline, it's a venue that every CT surfer dreams of surfing, and in talking to the surfers is really important for all of them to get a crack at it. And our feeling on the qualification piece of it was if it's good enough to potentially determine the world champion at Pipe, it's certainly good enough to determine who qualifies. So it's going to count towards qualification.
Oh, man, you just pumped me up with that last sentence right there, dude. I'm looking so forward to seeing everybody compete at the challenges because you're absolutely right. I mean, if you qualify for the CT, you should be capable of surfing a wave like that, right, Dave? So in the end, it's still a proving ground, and I love that it got extended to 7 events rather than just the 5 on the Challenger Series too. And the fact that one's maybe one of the counter results for a good portion of the surfers too. You're looking at everybody from Hawaii, Tahiti, Nui region. Kali Voss is probably just salivating at the moment to compete out there. I'm looking forward to it. But what a great event, Dave. Super stoked on the outcome of the Lexus Trestles Pro presented by Outerknown. And now we have 3 more events to go in the regular season, and potentially Lexus WSL Finals could be firing at Cloudbreak or even at restaurants too. Good 2 waves to select from right there.
Absolutely, man. So a lot going on. Definitely lock in your fantasy teams this week ahead of the upcoming event, the Vivo Rio Pro at Sakura. Mitch, you and I will be speaking again very, very shortly. There's 3 more events before the WSL Finals. And thanks to everyone listening to the podcast. Thanks for everyone that wrote in. If we didn't get to your comment or question, keep them coming. We'll hit you on the side for sure. And Mitch, great job at Lower Trestles. And enjoy the week, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. See you soon.